Start growth strategy for your new e-commerce platform? Our guest is a serial entrepreneur, and he's ready to share the best growth marketing strategies to scale your e-commerce startup at record speed and help you stand out in noisy spaces. Stay tuned for the Startup Life live show. Let's glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life live show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now share founders' startup stories to help newly minted business owners find the solutions and inspiration they need to succeed. And hey, it's June 1st. Happy month, everybody. Be sure to share the love, especially with our trans friends. Do something impactful for our LGBTQ plus community. Woohoo! And thank you for carving out time to tune in and up your founder game while cheering on a fellow founder and learning from a fellow founder. You never know, a new resource, tool, solution can be found while hearing a fellow founder's startup story. So delicious. And for those of you watching now, and via the replay, I would be so grateful for your support of the show with a like on this video wherever you're watching, because I'm live right now and archived on LinkedIn, Periscope, Facebook. Let's see, Twitch. Who did I miss? YouTube. Yeah.
YouTube.
So we're all there ready to glow. And if you feel someone could benefit from our conversation, tag them, share this link, because we're all here to help maximize the joy and minimize the heartache from founders' journeys. Oh, and if you're watching on YouTube, please click that subscribe button and that bell icon so you're alerted whenever I launch a new show. Okay, so I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today, because seriously, this man knows his stuff. And so let me just bring up his deliciousness right here while I make my introduction. It's Kevin Urrutia. Here we go. Kevin Urrutia. He is the founder of Voy Media, which is the Swiss Army knife of digital advertising, helping e-commerce brands grow at record speed and stand out in noisy spaces. A serial entrepreneur with an obsession and a willingness to grow new businesses in emerging markets, Kevin's entrepreneurial adventure began in 2011 and evolved into a deep passion and expertise in growth strategies for e-commerce platforms, including a $1 million luggage company called Chester, or as we say here in Boston, Chester. Most recently, Kevin and his co-founder developed the Shopify app Metrics Box and published a guide for aspiring digital marketers called Digital Marketing Made Easy. But I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite places to find the one and only Kevin. And that is his podcast, Digital Marketing Fastlane. You must subscribe to this podcast. Kevin shares amazing advice and interviews extraordinary folks. And he's got a co-host, and they have great conversations. Let's bring Kevin into the room. I got to get my clappers out, get ready to cheer him in. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Ande. How's it going? Great to be here.
Thank you. I got a lot going on here. I got the flag. I got my clappers. Thank you for joining me on the Startup Life live show. I'm so thrilled to meet you virtually like this and have a delicious conversation about something that we all need, which is traction. Right?
Traction, yeah. It's the hardest thing, yeah.
It's the hardest thing to do. Where are you hailing from today?
I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York. So excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you too. You know, hearing other founders' startup stories, we learn so much. And even though I can read your bio and I can follow you online and get scoop, it's not the same, because I know that you have more gems and more interesting things to share. And I just want to put it out. You know, I know we just had Memorial Day weekend. I know everybody's busy getting caught up after the 3-day weekend, but for anyone tuning in live, I'm going to throw this up right now. We so want to celebrate you. So share your business name, your one-liner, so we know what your business does, and website URL in the comments, and we will showcase and celebrate you and your wonderful work live. And who knows, Kevin may take a look at your brand and have a nugget or two to help you with some growth marketing. So I'm just putting that out there. And then everything you need to know about Kevin and where to find him as we continue the conversation is right there on the ticker tape below. Ah, there we go.
So good.
It's so good getting all the housekeeping goodies out. So you're down there in Brooklyn. You have been at this for a while. So they don't call you a serial entrepreneur for nothing, Kevin. What, though, had you and compelled you to become an entrepreneur in the beginning? Because did you see it in your family growing up? Did you have other experiences? Because, it's not something people just arbitrarily do. There's a calling, there's a feeling compelled. In my case, it was always stray cats at the door yelling to come in. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your story? How did you become an entrepreneur?
At least the biggest thing for me was, I think it was like growing up. We grew up in Queens with my family. And one thing, at least for me, that I saw was that, so my mom didn't work after she was like 18. And then my dad worked all the time. And he was working full time, but at the same time, I guess at that time, like anything, you don't really know that you're kind of poor, right? You're just kind of like, this is just life, right? So growing up, we had like a 2-bedroom, and my parents lived in one room, and then they had 4 kids, and we all lived in one room in bunk beds, like 2 and 2. So for me, it was like growing up, you're kind of like, this is life, right?
Right. It's camp.
And you're like, and then you go to school and you realize, oh wow, you actually don't have money, right? So like.
Nothing like seeing that what? You have your own bedroom?
Yeah. For me, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like I never had, I just shared a bedroom with my brother. But we always, and I guess, but growing up, that's why we're so close, because we're always together. Right.
Right.
But I think for me, I saw my dad working all the time, construction, and he would do full-time at his job, but at the same time, nights and weekends, he would do side jobs. And that was for me, I never thought about it as entrepreneurship, but for me, it was more like him, oh, this is a way for him to make money for the family. So he would always take us. And this is where I kind of got this journey. I was like, wow, this construction work sucks. I was like, I don't want to be doing this. And then that's kind of what made me be more attracted to computer stuff. This was kind of computers just came out. And I remember growing up, one of our neighbors purchased a computer for us. He was a guy named Carl Faust. He was 70 or 80, and he just saw our family and helped us tremendously. He got us our first computer, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then this whole internet thing got me excited, and I was and I kind of read stories online about people starting a company, and I was like, wow, I'm seeing my dad work all the time and so tired, and I was I'm seeing all these people online making millions. I was like, I want to be that person.
Right.
And that's it. So that's kind of what opened up my eyes. And for me at this age, I was very naive, and I was like, oh, this is possible, because you're reading all the stories on these young millionaires. I was like, this is what I got to do. And that's kind of where I got the idea to be my own founder or start my own company, was kind of my experience of not realizing hey, I don't want to be doing this construction thing because I'm not good at it. I don't want it, but I'm seeing these stories of people making money online, and the computer fascinated me, making something and playing games was really fascinating to me. That's why I went to college for computer science, because this is exciting. This is what I want to do. So that's sort of how I got it. And I feel that's sort of what's fueled me to always want to do my own thing. It's obviously it's a little bit of hey, I don't want to be in that situation I was growing up where I didn't realize that we didn't have money. So I want to be in control of my own destiny. And then I was looking at my dad, I was like, hey, you're only gonna get paid as much as your boss says. And I was like, oh, this is not what I want for myself. And I guess
that's incredible self-awareness too. Yeah. Did you go and work for someone for a while so you could see all the mistakes they made?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for sure. So in college, growing up, I had a job. I was working at CVS. I was working as a busboy, working at TJ Maxx, the classic retail jobs, right? And then I went to college at Binghamton, upstate New York. Yeah. And in Binghamton, SUNY. So in Binghamton, I actually started my web development agency. I guess my first company, right? It was called One Tiny Bit, and we were doing web design, Ruby on Rails stuff. So it was myself and Wilson, who's actually the founder of me with Voy Media. He's one of my best friends.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So it's just so funny because I guess anything, you don't, when you're in this moment, you don't realize things. We were doing cold emailing. We were going on Craigslist and finding people that are looking for an idea. Hey, I want to build an idea. We're hey, we're students. We're $12 an hour. Hire us. And that's how we got customers or like clients, right? Whatever. We didn't realize we're just like, and then it's so funny because like, I remember like me and Wilson would be like, okay, we got to sound like a big team. So we got to say we in every email, like we will do this. And it's like just me and him. And then, anyways, we got so busy in college. We actually hired one of our friends' brother who was like a CS guy, and he was in high school and he worked for us like almost full time during the summer. And I was like, that's so crazy. Like now thinking back, I was like 19 hiring people. I was just like, but for me, it was just like, hey, I just have work. Like I need someone to do it for me because I told the client I can get this done, and I don't have any Android experience, but I know he does. Yeah. So we're gonna do like an arbitrage. We're like, hey, I'll pay you an hour, and then we'll just charge double on top of that.
Yeah. So, see, and that for some people like you, Kevin, that's just common sense.
Yeah, and that's the thing too for me. I'm like, yeah, this is obvious. Like, yeah, like someone wants to work, someone needs something done. I can find somebody. I have a network, and that's what's
absolutely. Yeah. So then I know you went out to Silicon Valley. Why did you want to go check out the West Coast?
So for me, going back to like what I said earlier before, like the West Coast, Silicon Valley, that's what I read everything online. It's you want to do a company, you want to do a startup. At least for me, I was kind of aware of like, hey, like I want to do a startup, but I also don't have money. So like I need a job, right? So, and I know that if I want to get the experience and I need to go to the West Coast because that's where everybody is talking. At least for me, it was like be in that community where I can learn more. I'm a big believer of like, there's a community, you got to go there. Yes, I like being online, right? But there's something to be said about being next to people, talking to them, being in that environment and constantly being inundated with like the ideas that you want, which is like anything in life, good or bad, right? Like, like for me, when I was in Silicon Valley, everything was tech. Like you like forget about the world. Right. Like, you live in a bubble, which is, like I said, good or bad, right? But
you worked at some good companies, right? So that you were able to see how they flowed information, what standard operating procedures look like, right?
Exactly. So I worked at Intuit, Mint.com, TurboTax. I worked at Zarly, which I was there for 2.5 years. The great startup. And yeah, you learn, look at any company or job you do. I learned so much from both. When I was at TurboTax or Mint, I learned about project management, agile development, software development. Like there's so many things you learn. And of course, like anything, you learn things you like and don't like. And that's sort of what makes your unique experiences unique. And for me, when I left and started my own company, I was like, you reference things like, hey, I didn't like when my boss did that. I didn't like when I did that. So like, let me make it a little bit differently. Right. And that's why at least it's so funny because going back to like experiences, like I hired a lot of new people out of college. And I'm just like, wow, like, I guess you never worked corporate before because like, I was like, that's not how you talk to people. It's just like, well, like when you're in corporate, like at a company like TurboTax, like you're like, everytheverything's perfect. Like you're not like,
right.
You're not
everything.
Like,
there's no cash lingo. This is how it's said.
Yeah. There's no cash. There's like, it's like per the last email, you write very formal emails. Like when I'm like seeing some of my teammates email me, I'm like, dude, this isn't like, I guess I'm like, it's fine, but I'm just like, this is so interesting.
You bring up such a good point because, I earned my MBA in 89. So I had real formal training on how you properly communicated. Yeah. So when I got online in 2010 and 2011 and really started branding online, I had to shift my lingo from that formal conversation proper to, hey, how you doing? Hi,
Hi, smiley face, like 3 exclamation. I'm like, okay, did I put enough exclamation points in this email to sound exciting?
And also, delicious. What?
Yeah.
And branding Ande-licious advice, talking about myself like that. But it's still, you're absolutely right. There's that conversation. And, we have to be careful, founders, when we are building our team because family is lovely, but family attitude can come with some problems. So if you can have those important welcoming and wonderful and relaxed conversations with folks for sure, what Kevin's saying, but also make sure that you're not making it so that, we're just one big happy family because like, what if someone gets kicked out of the family? It's like, it's devastating. And so there's some business parameters around that, right?
Yeah. I always tell people like, it's like people always say it's a family, but really it's not like a family. I mean, you probably know it's like a family will like, no matter what you do, they'll accept you. Like, whereas in a company, it's more like a team, like a sports team where it's like, you have to perform. Like you need to perform. I tell people all the time, like the family lingo is kind of dangerous because a true family, like literally like I've done stuff. My family will always be there for me. Right. It's like where in a company you like mess up, you're not going to be there next week. Right. So
exactly.
I think people just have a great culture where you're just accountable. Like that's sort of what you're looking for is accountability. Hey, you messed up. How are we going to fix it? Let's change it. If you can't, maybe you shouldn't be part of the company. And like I tell people all the time, it sucks, but your favorite teams, like basketball players, the best players sometimes leave to join another team because they just aren't performing that the way the team needs. And that's how a company is. Like you're sculpting the team to win your situation, and you need to make the hard decisions as a founder. And sometimes it does suck because you probably know, Andy, it's emotional. Plus, it's just like humans. Like it's hard to let people go because they know they rely on you, and it's the hardest part of being a founder.
It absolutely is when you have to move someone along because they are not a fit. And a lot of times it's because, in the hiring process, you do the best you can as a founder, but until you see them in action with the team, and I cannot stress that enough, folks, not family, team. And I think that sets the right tone for the culture of the company. But, once you have to move them on, what are you going to say? Well, don't take it personally. Of course, they're going to take it personally. And, I interviewed someone a while back, Anthony, who talked about how he helps companies almost outsource folks, you're not a fit for here, but where can we take you? So, that's just something to always be thinking about, founders, as you're building your business. So let's talk about your first business where you really jammed. And I have it here that you grew your home cleaning business from 0 to 3 million in 18 months.
Yep. So that was Maid Sailor. So my first real business, right? Like before then I had like my one tiny bit, I had other startups, but really for Maid Sailors, the way that company sort of came out was because I was working at Zarly, which is like a home services company where we're like a platform, kind of like an Angie's List, right? And really I was working on the backend system, kind of the checkout process. So you had access to a bunch of stuff, like any engineer, you kind of have access to all this data that you don't realize that like, oh, maybe it's not secure. You're like, oh wow, I can just like pull reports and no one really knows, right? So basically I saw that like the home cleaning space, at least the cleaners we had on there, were the ones that was giving us this recurring revenue. And for me, it was very important because I saw that and I was like, hey, but I also saw customer service issues where if you had a great cleaner, you basically couldn't take any more customers. So I was like, what if I make a company of cleaners? And for people thinking about this time, this was when kind of Uber and Lyft first came out, where it was like, hey, these taxi drivers and the app kind of like got these sort of people on the platform. And that's sort of what I wanted to do. Initially, Maid Sailors was kind of called like everybody's private cleaner. I literally just stole like the Uber logo and put cleaning on it because like I was like, oh, this makes sense to me, right? And that's how Maid Sailor started. And remember, at this time too, I was already in San Francisco for 4 years. I was kind of like going back to family. I was actually missing my family. I was like, hey, I want to go back. I want to like see them. Like, you see them every once in a while, but like, it's not the same, So I moved back home. I moved back in with my mom because I was like, hey, like I want to actually build this company. And I lived at home for a year building Maid Sailors. And this is kind of where I truly learned about marketing and product market fit and everything that we realized that you needed to grow a company. Because again, going back to what I said before, I was building stuff, but I never got traction because I was like, and I realized why later on, because I was always building things that I didn't realize people needed. It was just like my own random ideas. And after a little bit of while, I started realizing there's this thing called like product market research. There's search intent. There's keywords on Google that you can see like, hey, what are people actually searching for? Like, oh, people are searching for home cleaning. Maybe there's demand. And then that's what I was like, that's when I realized like, oh, there's actually like ideas aren't like, they cannot really random. Like, it's truly, I think it's like, I'm not saying that I just random, but like there's companies like Airbnb and Uber. Those are very unique ideas. Like no one was searching for like, hey, let a stranger stay in my home, right? That is a very unique product.
And it never would have happened if 2008 hadn't happened, folks. Just saying.
Yeah. So like there's these ideas out there that people can build and people look up to. Airbnb, Uber. Those are unique and great. If you're a founder that does that, you're maybe like, that's like winning the lottery. But for everybody else like me, I'm like, I need stuff that people are searching for. I'm like, let me go provide a great service and let me go make money and build a team around that. So that's the way I think about businesses.
Hold on for 1 second, Kevin, because I'm having... I am so having an Andy-licious moment around that. There's so much comparing and despairing out there, Kevin. Really, folks, I like to give the yoga analogy. You've seen the yoga people who can put their right knee behind their head. Now, how many people can really do that, right? It's very rare.
Very rare.
But, that's what we see them doing, standing on one leg, maybe one pinky finger, and holding their whole body up. It's same thing with the Olympics. You see those athletes that worked really hard, but they also had the talent and the ability and capability to get there. It's the same thing. And they're, to compare yourself to businesses that you think, oh, I'm going to go unicorn. It's like, why? Are you cut out to be a unicorn founder? Do you know that about yourself? And I know Gary Vee, I love his comment where he says, I'd rather be happy in a Toyota than crying in a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And, it's so true. Find something that you can make money at that's going to change things generationally for you, right? And move forward.
Exactly.
So,
and I think, going back to what you said, it's kind of what you said. It's like, is it in you? Like, I read a lot of founder stories because I think that's interesting. And you hear stories of let's say Travis from Uber, the stuff he did is crazy, almost this gray area that most people would never do. But that's sort of what got him to be Uber, right? And sometimes it's
and Elon Musk. I mean, he was leveraged to the hilt.
Yep. And most people would never do that. And that's why these guys are willing to take this risk. Where I talk to people and they're like, no, I would never do that. I'm like, okay, well, your company can be a million, maybe make millions, but you'll never be this billionaire company or unicorn that people want to be nowadays. It's just different mindset,
Yeah, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And if you create something where it's $100K and it's paying for your bills and you're feeling great every day and it makes you happy and you're helping folks, that can be a win depending on where you live. And if it's multi-million, you grew your first business to 3 million in such a short period of time, that's great too. Or 50 million, whatever you feel called, because there's going to be a point, folks, that you are going to go past what you're capable of doing. And so you might be good at something, but you may be miserable doing it.
And that's so true, because even for mate sailors, we grew it. And like I said, mate sailors grew because, going back to what I said before, there was demand. So we had customers and we were able to find them. But going back to what you said, after a certain while, I left mate sailors. It was still mine because I knew I couldn't grow it past that stage. So then I hired somebody else to come in and be like, you're essentially running it for me, because I know where my skills lie. My skills lie in hey, building a company up, bringing it to market and getting initial traction. After a while, you realize that running a company is kind of just managing people. And it's that's not that fun. Right? So it's
and now you have a lot of bosses.
Yeah. So that's what I do. Yeah. Especially cleaning. There's so many, cleaning is you're literally getting 5 complaints a day about hey, the dirt off my bed was still there. I'm like, oh my God. I remember waking up 8 a.m. just hey, the cleaner's not, I remember hey, the cleaner's not here. I'm like, it's 8:01. Give us some time. I'm but people aren't like that. I mean, this is New York City. People want excellence. Right. But again, that's sort of what I tell people all the time. Why am I so different? I'm like, trust me, do a cleaning company. You'll be so hardened by complaints that I'm nothing, no complaints. I complain and I'm just whatever. It's
right up there with door-to-door sales, folks.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you just once you deal with it, you're just all right, that doesn't really bother me anymore. I've had worse. People would complain about a speck of dust and sent us 20 pictures. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot deal with this. Yeah.
So did that unwind? Did you sell it? How did you just say that I'm done doing that, I'm going to move on to something else?
So basically for that company, like I said, we hired somebody to run it for maybe another 4 years, and we just sold it this year. And the reason why we kind of had someone run it, because it was, I still did the marketing for it. So the marketing was what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do the operations, the complaints, the processes, the systems. I just wanted to bring in customers. I thought that was exciting. So for the maid company, I just said, hey, let me step back and let me just focus on customer acquisition, the SEO, the blog posts, the landing pages. And that sort of led me into e-commerce, kind of whatever. That's sort of what led me into e-commerce. So I was like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at marketing. I was like, but it's not scalable because it's a service-based business. You can't scale. Right. It's a great business, but it's you want more customers, you need more cleaners. And with anything with humans, it's just it's so hard to replicate a great cleaner from a bad cleaner. It's tough because people make mistakes. Right. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to be growing, if I want to continue growing my skill set, I need to go with a product or something that's going to allow me to just scale infinitely. And then that's when I saw about e-commerce. And during this time was when Amazon was becoming really big. Amazon's always been big, but the FBA thing, you probably heard of it. Oh my God, it's selling on Amazon. And I was like, okay, I got to do that. And
Right.
that's when I started Montum, which is my outdoor gear company. And that's when I was like, okay, like I'm learning so much more. I learned Facebook ads, Google ads, Instagram ads, Amazon ads, like the whole, like I went to China 3 times to look at my product sourcing. And that's where I learned
Nice.
more. And that's kind of like, I think you had a question. It's like, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? It's because of this. Like, if you work at a job, like all these opportunities, like you'll be lucky if like you get them. I'm like, when you run your own company, you could do whatever you want. Like no one's gonna tell you no. Like I want to do
Right.
e-commerce. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like who's gonna tell me no? Like my own mind, right? Like, but like that's why I like doing this type of stuff. Yeah.
I love that. And so now with your, uh, it's outdoor equipment
Yeah,
e-commerce,
Montum.
Montum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're starting to say, okay, Facebook ads. And of course, everybody knows Facebook ads
Yep.
has had an interesting run over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when you could put up a Facebook page and you'd get tons of thousands of people on your page. And now I don't even think and whatever you do, nobody hears you. And I know that's happened with the Facebook ads as well. But so you had to figure out this digital marketing for e-commerce, because at the end of the day, folks, if someone goes to my website, wonderful, right?
Yeah.
For a solopreneur like me with a live show, landing on my website isn't the big deal. But for e-commerce, oh heck yeah.
Yep.
That's how you're going to be selling them. That's where you're going to have your landing pages. You've got a lot going on. So let's talk about, for a new startup company, that's an e-commerce. Could be a box store, could be a sneaker store, could be jewelry, something. What do they need to start doing first? What's so important?
I think for Facebook now, like any founder that I work with or companies we work with, I still think the biggest thing is going to be content. When I say content, I mean videos, images, creatives. And even now when I'm working with a lot of founders, they're always saying, hey, I'm not creative. Like I'm not creative either, but like I have ideas that I think would work well. Just go out there and shoot stuff and film things. You have the product, you have what unique features you have. Go out and do it. I think as a founder, sometimes you need to just be able to do a little bit of everything. And that's kind of what I like about working with some brands and making products. I'm like, yeah, like even for Montum, we had to do a photo shoot. What do? We just went on Craigslist. We said, hey, we're looking for models to come shoot in Central Park. And then we just took a camera, we got models, and we shot stuff that we thought was good. It's kind of like just being able to just like do it. But that type of mentality, I think, works great for a lot of these e-commerce founders. And I'm seeing that more and more now, where before it was kind of like, hey, I got to build a nice brand. I'm like, all right, you're going to build a brand, but you need customers, you need sales. So let's get you that first. Yeah.
And you need to drive it. See, folks, that traction is so important. In my world, startup life, Kevin, it's all about fundraising. And I'm like, no, it's all about traction. If you want to create value in your business, you've got to get that customer acquisition going, understanding how much it costs you to bring that customer on. Will they be around again and again? And also, that creates the value so that when you do want to really leverage and you're like, gosh, I am going to need a couple of million to do that. Now you're going to be only selling maybe 5% of your business or 10% for that, because you have created so much value in your business. Whereas before you probably would have given up ownership. You probably would have had to give up, 45 to 50% of your business. And that's just wrong.
Yeah. And that's so important, I think, too. Like exactly what you said, like customers will fuel your growth, but at the same time, even for me, like it's very I tell founders all the time, like your customers will tell you what they'd like or don't like about your product. And then that will give you great feedback. As a founder, sometimes you're caught up with like, yes, like this is so important. But your customers like, actually, like that's not that important to me. This is what it is. Like, let's change the product this way, the service this way. And it's so helpful to get feedback. And again, as a founder, as a company, you need to be able to be receptive to this. There's some companies I talk to, they're like, yeah, I don't want to have like a customer support number. I'm like how do you get feedback? Like how like the best companies out there have support. Like, why don't you want to answer customer complaints? They're just like, because I know our product is good. And if they don't like it, it's their fault. I'm like, that's not how things work. I'm like, that's not.
Oh my gosh. I would have to just go.
I'm just like, I was like, okay. Someone said that to me. I was like, okay, that's interesting.
How's that working for you?
Yeah.
You brought up on your podcast, which I got to throw this up, folks, because you have to go and listen. I mean, just 8 minutes, okay? And you can do this on the treadmill, wherever you're working out. Grab these incredible pieces of advice from Kevin. But you mentioned one thing in your customer service, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, but how you ask someone after they've bought the product. Talk a little bit about that. Ask them, like, why'd you buy?
Yeah, I think like something that's so important. Yeah, like there's like post-purchase. If you're doing like something like Shopify, which is a great platform for a lot of founders, very easy to drag and drop. You don't need to do too much work. It's about $10 a month or maybe a little bit less. Um, there's this thing called post-purchase surveys that you can ask, and you can literally say, "Hey, why'd you buy the product?" And this gives you great insights into why they purchased it. Because sometimes, like at least for Monta, my personal experience is we thought people were buying it for themselves to go hiking, but a lot of customers told us, "Hey, I'm actually buying it for my grandma because she needs like a walking cane alternative." And we're just like, "Oh, I never thought about that because like I'm not that target demographic." And then we realized a lot of customers were saying that. We then switched our ads and marketing to be like walking cane alternatives, and that just boosted our sales even more. And then we made special landing pages just with that messaging and then targeting those people. And I was like, "Oh wow, it's interesting. I never thought about that." As like I always tell people, like look at ways people are using your product that isn't conventional, and maybe that's a different segment or market. Don't always think about it as like a bad thing, where some people think, "Oh, this is not how you use it." I'm like, well, if they're using it, maybe because there's no better alternative, and maybe you can make something that fulfills that need. Because that's sort of what we are as founders, entrepreneurs, is we're here to fulfill needs. Unless you're making something like totally unique, like like an Uber Airbnb, that's very different, right?
Well, or the cure for some specific cancer or disease. But I want to just take a moment to congratulate you and just in what you said here, because it's so important. And as a founder, you're always proving your hypothesis that people want what you're selling.
Yeah. Yep.
And the best way to do that is through experimentation. So what you just talked about, Kevin, is just so phenomenal, is to remind everybody, set up those experiments.
Yep.
Become the scientist, stay curious. And I know it's so hard, when you're launching that e-commerce business and you've got products out there and you're trying to move it. You're talking about creating the content, keeping the buzz out there. Can folks oversaturate with content? What do you need to worry about with content?
Yeah, I think with content, I don't think you can always saturate. I think you can always be putting out more content. I think the thing with content, it's you can do bad content when it's not relevant. Like at least for now, like we're seeing this like movement towards like quick movements, dancing. Like if you're not posting that type of stuff, then your content's like no one's gonna look at it. Like you need to be TikToky, you need to be doing like these crazy fonts, and that's sort of why marketing or anything digital moves so fast. Because like as a company, you're just like, I just got like to do this like thing that everybody's doing last week. I'm like, yeah, but now you got to switch because like people are moving and upgrading. So that's what makes it difficult. Because but at the same time, it's so funny because people find that difficult. For me, like that's why I did programming, computer science, because like every other month there's like a new programming language, a new update to the programming. I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. This is always changing. Like this is exciting. So that's why I see with marketing. I'm like, oh my God, every year there's something new. Where people are like, oh my God, I just figured out Facebook Ads Manager. I'm like, yeah, but like it updated again. I'm like, so like, you got to learn it again, right? Yeah. So
well,
but I find that,
yeah, always be learning. That's the key to founderhood, everybody. Is always be upping your game. That's why we have these conversations here.
I love that. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, something new. I'm like, that's great. Like even what we were saying before, like the iOS 14 update, it's like a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm like, this is great. I'm like, something's going to come out of this. Like there's going to be some innovation. I was like, someone's going to figure out something. And this is great. It means better for everybody. Like when it's stagnant, that's bad, because then that just means like you're a monopoly. There's no innovation, And
take on Kevin's mindset, everybody. Do you see how excited? Oh, good, because it's so easy to go, oh no.
Yeah.
You got to stay curious. You got to be interested, and if it means you need to outsource it and have somebody show you, that's okay too, and have them bring you on. I remember when Pinterest came out, and I was like, oh, for crying out loud. And I have to learn. I had just nailed everything down. I really was jamming on all the sites at that point. So I waited till the people who were in it for business started talking about it. And then I went in, and to this day, my Pinterest feed, I get thousands of views on short videos, on anything I put up. It's wonderful. But I want to say to everybody on the TikTok, I know I looked at TikTok. I like, great, I'm going to be doing dance moves on TikTok. I don't think so. Am I going to be showing people how to cook on TikTok? Nope, not going to be doing that. But I actually love going on TikTok because I find it very entertaining. And then it was my 35 and under founders that kept saying, Andy, you need to be on TikTok. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm too old for TikTok. But, I started and I love it.
It's a great platform. And again, going back to what I said before too, it's like if your brand wants to be on TikTok, outsource it. There's so many people out there that will say like, okay, great, I'll post a TikTok of your brand for like a few $100 a month. And a few companies do that. And that's so easy. Like you can still be relevant. They know what's in the space. And then
Well,
that's
and it
what we
reminds
do.
me, it reminds me of the early days with Twitter, only 140 characters to get your value prop across. That's what you have to do with TikTok. I mean, yes, some videos go longer, but if you're thinking 15 seconds for a soundbite, you need to get something across yourself, something compelling. I think that's where the real challenge comes, right? It's just how do you get your message across in such a short period of time?
And that's kind of like why I like to, it's like these constraints drive innovation. Right? When like 15 seconds, I'm like, whoa, this is so crazy how like in 15 seconds, these like people are just saying like so much content. And like, and that's why like, remember when Vine was really popular, it was like 3 seconds. I was like, oh my God. And it's like, it blew up. And at least for me, the way I think about it has always been to programming. Programming language always has constraints. Like you need to type this thing way. But with the programming language, you see that everything's made. Every single app is made by a programming language that has rules. So the rules are there to sort of be creativity. So I've always thought about programming as kind of like art, because let's say we both know two people know programming, we'll make a program both differently because the way we think, the way we're processing the language is different, but it'll still be the same outcome. And that's why I think programming is like art, where I was like, oh, I like it. That's kind of what
it is art. When I have a son who's just about to graduate with his game design degree, it is art, right?
So I've always thought about it like that. It's like, oh, this is so fun. I'm like, it's not just like logical. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like your mind like being challenged. I was like, I like it.
I think that's wonderful. And I think, it's just so important that we stay relevant and go where our customers are hanging out. And that's another thing, right? Kevin, we need to know where our people are hanging out, the people that we want to reach. Let's talk about Voy Media. Let's talk about how you serve folks, because, you've helped folks who've been on Shark Tank. You've helped folks, in all different levels with Voy Media. How does that work? How do people work with you, and what value are they going to get from the experience?
Yeah. So when we work with partners at Voy Media, we kind of help them kind of like, we consider ourselves like a growth agency where you have a product or business. Ideally, you're kind of already in a phase past sort of like the idea. We don't really work with ideas, but you have something, you have some sort of initial traction. And then we come in to sort of help you with your go-to-market strategy. And for us, that's just not like Facebook, Instagram. That's like every channel: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, for example. And we come in and build the funnels or the processes or the sales page that we think are going to get you to customers. And then when we work with founders, we're really thinking about everything you kind of said: LTV, customer acquisition costs. A lot of founders come to us, they don't know it. So we're like, okay, that's fine, right? It's fine that you don't know it. Hey, let's think about it. Like, how much profit do you want to make? If you want to make 10%, we need to price it at this price. You want to make 20%, this price. Hey, by the way, Facebook ads are going to cost you an average, $20 a sale, and your product's $15. You maybe need to think about how we're going to be upselling or bundling things. So we come in as like kind of like growth consultants, and with the execution part, that way we can sort of help you be thinking about it. And I always tell people, like, you probably know this, Andy, too. It's like, we have all these ideas, like, we are just giving you our best estimate. Like, we don't know how much results you're going to get because the market, it's product,
marketing people.
Yeah.
There are no guarantees with marketing. Okay. It's just, you need to take, you need to have a strategy, because without marketing, it would be like driving your car without a steering wheel. You need to know what your goals are, what your KPIs are, what you're looking for. And of course, I just have to, say this too. You gotta know your LTV CAC ratio, folks. This is how you find out about your marketing investment dollars, what you're putting in to bring these customers on. It's not enough just to quote book $6,000. You got to know, how much did that $6,000 cost me to do? I mean, you've already put the money into the product. What is that costing? And here, this is such a good question, Christopher Jones. Thank you very much for asking. In our world, Kevin, I just think everybody knows what a landing page is, right? But no, I mean, when you're first starting out, you could have been in banking. And what's a landing page? Kevin, take it away and help. And Christopher, I love that you asked this.
Yeah. So when we think about when you go to a website, a lot of people think like your homepage is like a landing page, which is great. A homepage is great, but that's not really where you want to drive paid traffic to. And the reason is because your homepage probably explains everything in too much not enough detail, and it's very generic. Like, where it was a landing page, it's a page that's specifically made for a Facebook ad campaign or Google campaign that's tailored toward that sort of like person that you're looking for. For example, for Montum, we're targeting like people with like that want like a walking cane alternative. Our home, if you go to montomelife.com, we never talk about walking cane alternatives, but we have a sub page that's just about walking cane alternatives, talking about alternatives, why it's better, our price point, and also why you should need it. And then again, it has a specific call to action that's to buy with that sort of messaging. So really with a landing page, think about it as a way to test messaging without kind of like, people think about like hurting the brand, but like that's how people, it's like, hey, like you can test very direct copy, you can test long form, short form, you can test a video. I love landing pages. Like I think it's the best way to like get customers, because like you can literally just cut all that other stuff. Like no one cares about your about, your FAQ. Like just put it in a landing page and just like put it like, yeah.
And also, Christopher, too, it doesn't show up as a tab on your website. So you've got a unique URL. So you can go onto Bitly or Tiny or Pretty and create just the right URL to send people that. And that's when you're going to be pushing that on social media. So they're going to go to that page, which is part of your website. It's just not visible when someone lands there on your homepage, correct?
Yep, exactly. And then, like I said, you could just test anything you want without like being afraid that like, oh, this is not our brand. But like sometimes what happens is like you realize your landing page is better than your homepage, and then you convert your homepage into a landing page. So
that's right. You know, and I just want to say a quick hi to Ted. Hey, Ted, how are things down in Phoenix? We had 3 days solid of rain. The sun came out last night for a minute. We're very happy up here. Ted's asking, post-purchase survey sounds cool. Sadly, many retailers don't ask questions that elicit usable feedback. And hello. That is so important. So thank you, Kevin, for talking about how important it is to find out why'd you buy.
Yep. Why'd you buy? And then too, like going back with like post-purchase surveys or anything like that real quick, something that we've done too is this kind of like is a small lift, but I've had this for a long time, is after 30 days, we'll just call customers and say, hey, like, because you know their phone number. And it's like, hey, like love to, like, my name is Kevin, or I'm one of the founders, love to know your experience. Very easy lift to do. And like, you can do a few. So the reason why I do this is because going back to my cleaning company, Maid Sailors, we have a team of people that call people. And like, we would always call them after cleaning saying, hey, we saw that your cleaning was 2 weeks ago. Do you want a recurring? It's like, oh yeah, actually I do. So it's like, for me, it was like, great. Like, let me just bring this experience to e-commerce. And getting a person to do like calls is not expensive. It's just like give them a few hours a week. So something to do.
Oh my gosh. You know, how many of you would have thought to make a call? I don't, you know, picking up the phone anymore. I mean, who does that? I think that's brilliant. Even if you're leaving a voicemail message, they're going to check their messages.
Yeah. And it's like, and that it's so powerful when it's like the founder of the company you just purchased. Because a lot of times, like, you think these, like, a lot of people think these companies are big companies, but it's probably just like people like me and you, just like, hey, we're starting a business. Like, let's connect. Let's thank you. And also it reduces returns too. So like, okay, like, yeah, I don't need a return anymore since I know you're like a one person company. So yeah.
And that's part of the hustle, but that's also the brand promise. You know, when you're putting out your brand promise, which is that emotional connection that you're going to have with everybody every time you post, every time you do anything in marketing, whether it's your logo, the look and feel of your website, or your online content, you've got this engagement, emotional engagement. And I just think that soft touch with a phone call feels so good. You know what I want to learn more about? Because, you know, everybody who has an e-commerce, product that they're going to be selling online, they love the Shopify platform. Yeah. And you've created the Shopify app metrics box. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we love Shopify as well. I think it's a great platform for a lot of founders. It makes it super easy. We created this app called Metrics Box that allows, basically goes back to what we said before. It gives you like insights into what products are selling the most, what products are getting bundled together. That way you can make special offers. But again, it gives you kind of all these sort of like LTV numbers saying, hey, look, like these customers are buying 4 or 5 times. They're worth a lot of money to you. So maybe going back to what I said before, think about how can you utilize it. Can you reach out to them? Can they make content for you? Can you send them free products for your new launch? That way they can give you a testimonial. There's so much. The thing about marketing and what people say nowadays, like D2C, it's really because you have all this data. And the issue I see a lot of founders don't use is they don't use it. They know who the best customers are, but they're just kind of like, oh, I don't want to bother them. But those are the customers you should be saying, hey, we have a new product launch. I'd love to get your feedback because we know that you love the brand and you're like have a high affinity to it versus like new customers that have never seen your brand before. So with D2C as founders, e-commerce is like, you need to use your data and see what you can do. And do stuff that doesn't scale, like call them, email me. Like, you're not like this like huge company like Nike that like has tons of company. Like people are like, oh, I'm gonna be like on Nike. I'm like,
it's not a robocall here. And
Yeah.
and for folks tuning in, DTC,
Yeah.
that's direct to consumer,
yeah.
which is so delicious because you keep your margin.
Yeah.
Versus,
And you have the customer data that you can. And the reason why I like it too is for founders listening is like, let's say you're in the outdoor gear space and you build a company, blah, blah, blah. What happens is like you can partner with other companies in the same space in many ways. Like there's like, think about it. You can share lists, you can share customers, you can share. There's so many ways to do it because these customers are yours. You quote unquote own them in some way, right? Mm-hmm. And at least for me, when we're working with brands nowadays, we're building email lists through like one product, for example, like info products, digital products, and then we know that space they need another product. So then we're creating another brand or product on top of that we can sort of get the LTV up. Because we know that the CAC is there, saying, hey, how do we make the LTV higher? Let's make a different service or product that these customers already want. Since we already own them, we can email them, retarget them for different ways.
And I'm going to put out a plug here. Go to my YouTube channel, everybody. Go down to the playlist, Andelicious Advice, and watch this video. I explain LTV, long-term value, CAC, CAC, customer acquisition cost, and why, not just how to calculate it, but why you need to calculate it. Seriously, I take you through so that you can dump your numbers in, unless you're already on Shopify, which I believe they do that for you, right?
Yep. Yeah. Shopify does that. They'll give you a lot of data. And then, that's useful because you can also input like some of your costs and they can give you like your profits and stuff like that.
And folks, it's not the number of sales. It really isn't. If you've just, booked 3 million, how much of that is profit? Because that's what you need to put back into your business, as well as get yourself a treat.
Yep.
Buy a new car.
And get paid. Yeah. I think like whenever you're calculating and stuff, like think about it as in what would be like if you were to pay yourself. A lot of times founders don't pay themselves. So it's kind of like calculate your profit if you were to pay yourself like market rate salary. That way you truly know if your business is profitable, because something that I've seen before too is like, you have a business and you're trying to sell it and they're like, well, like no one in the company got paid. So like technically like we can't hire employees if we were to take it over because we need to pay the employees. And once you start calculating their profits, like you're not that profitable. So it's like, there's things to think about. Like, it's not just like the number. It's like, is it actually profitable? Like, hey, if you're to pay yourself a market rate of whatever, 80, 60K, and your team size is 5 people, would it make sense still? So
right. And same thing with that product.
Yep.
You're backing it out, so to speak. Every dime that went into it, as the packaging, the shipping, the development of everything in there, that has to be calculated in your cost of goods margin. And so you have a true understanding of profitability. I will never stop beeping the horn around that. I got to tell you, Kevin, because especially in the day and age, this is so similar to when I had a .com company where people are just talking about, oh, I raised this amount of money. I raised that amount of money. Not only that, you founders know that you were spending way too much money and time, but mostly time working on that pitch deck and finding investors to pitch to, when you could have been out there with that same amount of time getting traction and getting customers, right, Kevin?
Yep, exactly.
And let's talk about customer loyalty, because you work so hard, founders, to launch your e-commerce business. You have a valuable product. From your beta testing that people want this, but you also have to, at the same time, build in the practice to create loyalty, to create word of mouth marketing, and all the things that will keep you differentiated from people in a noisy space who are selling the same thing. Yep. So Kevin, talk about that, because you have great advice for customer loyalty.
Yeah. So for customer loyalty, there's a few ways I think about it. You create customer loyalty. I think even from when you introduce your brand to a prospect, and that also is from when you're talking about your warranty or your refunds. I think something that founders you should be doing is giving people like 30, 60, even 90-day refund policies. That way they know that you believe in your product so much. And as a founder, you should believe in your product that much that you're saying, hey, yep, I know that this is going to work really well, so you can try it out and use it. And you're going to get some returns, but the way I think about it too, it's look at Amazon. Why do so many customers trust Amazon? Because they have a really great ironclad guarantee. Like if a product doesn't work, you're going to return it. And for some reason, like tons of people return stuff on Amazon, but there's no like bad, people still love the brand. It's like these little things that you do really help you. And I know some people are like, oh my God, but I don't want to deal with returns. And so this is how we've done it for some of my brands. If someone has returned, we'll say, hey, actually don't return to us. We'll just refund you the money, keep the product, because it actually costs us more money to get a product back, get into storage, and then throw it out. I'm like, and then the customer feels excited, like, oh, really? I can keep it? I'm like, just keep it. Yes, like just keep it, because I'm actually costing more money than getting it back.
Remember that. That is a wonderful thing. I've got a beautiful credenza right here from Wayfair.
Yeah.
They said, look, we don't have it in store. Just keep it.
Yeah, it's a great, easy way, and like, no one knows that except for that person that is requesting a refund, and then they'll feel good, like, oh yeah, it's great customer loyalty. Customer loyalty comes from just the way you're also sending messages out. At least for me, I love creating customer loyalty by sending personal emails from like the founder or someone that works at the company. I think that works really great when at least for Montem, if you buy, maybe 10 minutes after you buy, we have an automated sequence that says, hey, thanks for purchasing. My name is Kevin, one of the founders. We started in New York City. Love for you to tell us how the product is. It's sort of like these like little messages that get people into you thinking about your brand. Like that.
Well, also it makes it personal. Like it makes them understand that they bought from someone.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And even though, you're expanding and you're millions of dollars in sales, everybody take a moment to take that in, share a little bit. Because, a lot of times when we launch a business, we want to look like the big gals and guys out there. But it's so important to show that you have humble roots, that you were just and one of my favorite sayings is when you buy from a small business, someone's ringing a bell going, yay, happy days.
No, for sure. I think it's like, I find it, I think like everybody wants to be a big company, but every big company wants to be a small company. So it's like, it's so interesting how like you talk to the founders, like, I want to be massive, but like companies like Nike, like Adidas, they have like startup divisions because they want to be small. So as a founder, as an e-commerce owner, like going back to what I said before, you're nimble, you're quick. That's your advantage over these big companies. You can test landing pages, you can test messaging that's off brand, because that is what you do. Like a Nike can't all of a sudden come up with a landing page because customers are going to see it because they're so massive, right? Whereas like my brand, like Montem, I create a landing page, 20 people see it. It's not like, oh my God, can you believe what Montem did? I'm like, Nike, it's like, hey, they say something that's not on brand, like it's going to be all over social media. So it's a very different type of company. So
that's so amazing. And now, of course, you've had to manage remote teams. I mean, I read Rework back in, I want to say 20.
Long time ago,
2009, 2010.
I probably read it around the same time too.
Yeah. And it's so important. And of course, COVID has really helped us understand what remote teams look like. But I know that you've picked up some real gems over the years on how to manage remote teams so that they feel part of the team.
Yeah. So for me, remote work, I love remote work. I actually used to do it all the time. Like back in when I was working at San Francisco, we were working remotely, even though I was living in the city. Kind of when I had one tiny bit, I was like kind of working remote for clients because I was like in college and they were like all over the world. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And at least for me, the biggest thing with working remote is I love using something like Slack or some sort of like online tool. Before Slack, we were using something called HipChat, which is kind of like a Slack alternative. Like if people don't know HipChat, it's like, think about it as like a company that like could have been Slack, but for some reason the founders didn't realize the possibility, which is kind of fun. It's crazy to think about. You see how like you have a similar product, but like,
well, we saw that before, AOL back in the day. There was Prime America or something. They could have taken over the world, but they didn't. Can I just say just one quick thing about Slack? I want to remind everybody that Slack, these founders had a game design business that they lost $17 million of other people's money with. Okay. But it was their ability to communicate with each other. This platform they created that they said, well, what can we do with this? Let's see if we can do something with this. Right. And that's how Slack was formed. So you'd always win when you start a business. Go ahead. Go back to managing remote teams.
The Slack stuff, like Stuart is like so smart. Yeah. He also created Flickr because of the same concept too, of like a game, which is like crazy. Like, so he's sort of a smart guy. But working remotely, I think at least for us, kind of what we like to do is we like to have like weekly meetings, and sometimes it depends because sometimes there's weeks where there's nothing to say, but it's always great to have some sort of cadence of stuff that's going on. We also like to use Asana, be very organized with your work and communicate on the platforms. And with hiring remotely, at least for me, I think it's kind of like anything with hiring or firing. I think within the first 30 to 60 days, you know who's going to be a good fit for the company, and you need to make a decision if you're going to keep them or not. I think the longer you hold somebody that doesn't communicate well, doesn't work well with the team, you have to let them go, because it just sucks. And it's like, we've had situations where we held someone on for like 6 months. We're just like, yeah, like I tell people all the time, the first time you think about firing a person is probably when you should fire them, because great people, you don't think about firing ever.
And you don't even have to have that word fire, folks.
Yeah.
It's get them to the pasture they need to be in. You put them into the landscape and the environment that they would be better suited
Yep.
for.
Exactly. And that's really what it is. It's like, some people are just like, hey, you're like, some people I'm like, you're probably too senior for here, because what you're looking for is like, we're in the nitty gritty, like, and it seems like you don't want to do that, which is fine. You probably want to go to a company that's a little bit higher up that has like so again, that's sort of the way, exactly what you said. It's like, they're looking for the company they're looking for is not what we have. So at least when we interview people, like, we made so many mistakes, we're just saying, okay, by the way, before you work here, let me tell you exactly what you're going to be doing. And then like, if you want it, great. If you don't, that's fine, right? Like, find what you want.
When we had our .com, I mean, first of all, we were negotiating stock option agreements with 25-year-olds all the time.
Oh,
all right.
God, that's
and
tough.
there's that. But we were in Southern California. So I had to remind them about the extremely litigious state of California, which meant they were an employee at will no matter what.
Yep.
And still, when we did move them along, they were like, what? And they thought they had rights. No, you signed right here. So folks, it's always important to have a good HR consultant on your team, outsourced, freelance, whatever, to make sure.
Yeah. And going back to with feedback, I think having a great lawyer or somebody is like important. Like, a lot of people hate lawyers, but like, they actually can save you a lot of time and headache when you're sort of building a company and you actually want to grow it. Like, and it's like, people always get mad at them. I'm like, trust me, like, we have situations where like, we're like, oh crap, I wish I had a lawyer for this, because like, we completely messed up this agreement. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm going to, in the show notes, everybody, hit the link for Startup Docs, because they can help you. And if you use Ande, I think I have Ande 10 in there as a discount, go do it, because this is a terrific team. Sankeetha, I think, is in 6 states now. She's going to be growing. So, it's really important to get that attorney on board, especially, understanding your state laws as well as the federal laws.
Yep.
Hey, Kevin, how have you shifted your mindset when you have felt inadequate, when you have felt like, what am I doing here? Oh my gosh, I know nothing, which is what many founders feel many times.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like people feel like that all the time. I feel like that all the time too. Like, even when like I'm growing my company, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe like I run this thing. Like, it's like crazy. Even for Voy Media or any other previous companies. Really for me, a lot of times is kind of, at least for me, I tell myself like, hey, this is like what I wanted. And now that I'm here, like, what am I afraid of? Because this is all I've waited for my whole life. So that kind of helps me go through like some of these like rough times. It's like, hey, like, this is what I chose. Like, it wasn't the stress, the heartache wasn't given to me. It was like what I decided to do and I wanted to pursue. So let me go and figure out how can I do what I need to do to make it better or fix the situation.
Beautiful. I love that. And how has entrepreneurship served you both personally and professionally?
Oh, I love entrepreneurship. Kind of what I said before, like, I can just tell people all the time, like, the best thing is like the ability to do whatever you want. Like, I wanted to start e-commerce company. I started Montem. I started a luggage company. I was like, I've never traveled. I don't really travel that much, but I'm like, I can figure it out. And that's sort of why I like entrepreneurship, because like, if you have a great mindset of you can figure it out and you could do whatever you want, then the world is yours. I always tell people, like, there's a famous quote by Steve Jobs, like a great entrepreneur. I heard it like when I was in, I think, high school. And it was just like, everything around you was created by people no smarter than you. So go and create. And I was like, oh yeah, like everything around me is created by somebody. Like, why can't that person be me? And that's sort of how I've always thought about things. I'm like, and it goes back to what people have said before. It's like when you meet your celebrities or you meet your like role models, they're just regular people. So I'm just
they absolutely are. And you know what? I've got right here, I can figure that out. That stitch that on a pillow moment, folks. Yeah. I can figure it out. Yep. Absolutely outstanding advice. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, that's like I said before, anything is possible. You can figure it out. Like online, you can Google almost anything. Like,
Yeah.
trust me, like Googling is a skill that like entrepreneurs need to have. So yeah.
What did we do without Google to
Yeah.
answer all our problems and all our questions? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your brilliance. You laid down so many gems for all of us to pick up and put into our toolkit, our startup toolkits,
Yeah.
and sharpen our startup tools with. I'm just so grateful for your time and presence. And I'm just sending you big hugs and
Yeah.
best of wishes for continued success. And it's been a delicious conversation. I'm so grateful for your generosity.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm going to pop you in the green room and sort of wrap everything up here with everyone. Okay, come on. Kevin knows his stuff. Seriously, I'm going to pop this brand image up again here. Check it out. You've got to go to Digital Marketing Fastlane. And he's on Anchor, but he's on, everywhere you hear your podcasts and listen to podcasts, he's there. Trust me, whether you're working out, waiting in line to pick your kids up, walking your dog, take a minute and up your game as a founder and listen to Kevin. Okay, so Friday, June 4th, we have a phenomenal guest. All these guests are phenomenal. Who am I kidding? A fab founder. It's Friday, June 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's Madison Campbell. She's the CEO and co-founder of Lita Health, a company created in 2019 for survivors by survivors to quell the many systemic shortcomings surrounding sexual assault services. And Lita is on a mission to give a voice to the voiceless and to provide the care and resources needed for a full recovery. I'm telling you, this woman has gotten in trouble with her website, with the law, and she's been cited and fined and has so many great stories. Because you talk about constraints when you're launching a business. Who knew that putting up a wonderful company that is about developing a new holistic system for sexual assault prevention, care, and justice would get you in trouble. So anyway, Madison has some wonderful stories to share with us. So I hope to see you then, either live or later. In the meantime, I really want you to remember these very important things as you are on your founder journey. And that is that you are braver than you believe. You are stronger than you seem. You're building those muscles and you are smarter than you think. So keep up the great work because you always win in startup life, no matter what. Even if you go back to being an employee, you are a winner from what you've learned about yourself and what you've built professionally as far as your tools and skill sets and mindsets. So until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day wherever you are. Mwah! Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time.